Need everyone to view this video in its entirety. This is Dr. Mark, Animal Advocate. I have a profound message for our churches and its leaders. People all the time ask me why I do not attend church. Fair question. When our churches and its leaders begin to act like they respect all of God's creations and become the true stewards of life, then I will look upon our churches in a different light. Until then, this is for the leaders of our churches, a call to accountability. As shepherds of God's flock, you are entrusted with more than the care of human souls. You are called to protect and cherish all of God's creations. And yet in your sermons, prayers, and actions, there is a resounding silence where there should be compassion for animals, the innocent beings God created with purpose and love. In your roles as leaders, you are failing a critical part of God's covenant, neglecting the stewardship over animals that the Lord entrusted to humanity. For too long, you have ignored the cries of the voiceless, turning your focus inward, while the suffering of animals continues to go unmentioned and unaddressed. This silence is a profound disservice, not only to these creatures but to your own congregation who look to you as a moral compass. How can you preach about love, mercy, and compassion, yet disregard the duty to care for all life? This is a wake-up call, a plea for you to reflect on your sacred role. It is time to remember that God's command to protect His creation does not exclude the creatures of the earth. Your silence is a failure that echoes across every neglected life, and it is time to change. To truly honor God, you must not only serve humanity, but protect and uplift all His creations. Will you finally step up and fulfill this sacred duty? Did you know that less than 1% of churches in the U.S. have formal programs dedicated to animal welfare? This statistic might come as a shock to many, especially considering the vast array of charitable activities that churches are known for. It's a surprising statistic, isn't it? When we think of churches, we often envision them as pillars of the community, extending their hands to help those in need. We see churches involved in all sorts of good works: food banks, homeless shelters, disaster relief. These efforts are commendable and have a profound impact on countless lives. But animals? That seems to be a different story. Despite the clear biblical teachings about kindness to all of God's creatures, many churches have yet to extend their compassion to animals. So, the question is, are churches missing an opportunity? Could they be doing more to integrate animal welfare into their missions? Do they have a responsibility to care for God's creatures, both two-legged and four-legged? Many would argue that they do. After all, stewardship of the earth and all its inhabitants is a recurring theme in many religious texts. Let's dive in and explore the complex relationship between churches and animal welfare. By examining the potential for churches to expand their outreach to include animals, we can uncover new ways for these institutions to fulfill their higher calling. Imagine a world where churches not only feed the hungry and shelter the homeless, but also provide sanctuary for animals in need. This could lead to a more holistic approach to compassion and care, reflecting the true spirit of many religious teachings. Historically, many religious traditions have emphasized the importance of kindness to animals. From Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals, to various passages in the Bible that speak of God's love for all creatures, the foundation is there. Modern churches have the opportunity to build on this foundation. By incorporating animal welfare into their programs, they can set a powerful example for their congregations and communities. Imagine church members volunteering at animal shelters, organizing pet adoption events, or even creating sanctuaries for abused and neglected animals. These actions could not only save lives, but also inspire a greater sense of empathy and responsibility within the community. The journey towards integrating animal welfare into church missions won't be without challenges. It will require thoughtful planning, dedicated resources, and a shift in perspective. But the potential rewards are immense. By embracing this higher calling, churches can create a more compassionate world for all of God's creatures. Let's explore how this vision can become a reality. For many people, faith is a driving force in their lives, shaping their values and actions. And for many, compassion for animals is a core value. So it's natural to wonder, where does animal welfare fit into the teachings and practices of our churches? It's not just about feeling sorry for stray dogs or abused animals, though that's certainly part of it. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all living beings and our responsibility to be good stewards of the planet we share. Let's be honest, the focus in most churches is on people. And that's understandable. People are hurting, people need help, people are struggling. But does that mean we should overlook the suffering of animals? Some people argue that animals don't have souls, that they're not as important as humans in the eyes of God. But others point to the Bible, which speaks of God's love for all creatures and our duty to care for them. The good news is that some churches are stepping up. They're organizing pet food drives, offering blessings for animals, and even providing sanctuary for abused or abandoned creatures. Some churches are going even further, advocating for animal welfare legislation and raising awareness about factory farming practices. These churches are showing that faith and compassion can extend beyond the human world and make a real difference in the lives of animals. A change of heart? Father John's journey. Father John, a kind-hearted priest in a small rural community, had always been a dog lover. His love for these loyal companions was evident to everyone who knew him. He would often be seen walking through the village with a dog by his side, a gentle smile on his face. The bond he shared with these animals was something truly special, a testament to his compassionate nature. He had a soft spot for strays and often took them in, finding them loving homes. Father John believed that every dog deserved a chance at a happy life, and he made it his mission to ensure that as many as possible found their forever homes. He would spend hours caring for them, nursing them back to health, and then carefully selecting the perfect families to adopt them. His dedication to these animals was unwavering. But, his concern for animals remained largely personal. He never thought of it as a cause or a mission, beyond his own small acts of kindness. It was something he did quietly, without seeking recognition or praise. To him, it was simply the right thing to do. His home was always open to a stray in need, and his heart was always ready to offer love and care.
One Sunday, a parishioner brought in a newspaper article about the horrors of puppy mills. The article detailed the inhumane conditions in which these dogs were kept, the neglect they suffered, and the cruelty they endured. It was a stark contrast to the loving care Father John provided to his strays. The images and stories were heart-wrenching, and they left a deep impression on him. The images of dogs living in filth and squalor, deprived of basic care and compassion, shook me to my core. I couldn't believe that such cruelty existed, and it pained me to think of the suffering these innocent creatures endured. The article described dogs crammed into tiny cages, living in their own waste, with little to no food or water. It was a nightmare, and it was happening in the real world. That day, my perspective shifted. I realized that my love for animals couldn't just be about rescuing the occasional stray. It had to be about something bigger, something more impactful. I had to do more than just provide a safe haven for a few dogs. I had to fight against the systemic cruelty that allowed such suffering to exist. It was a moment of profound clarity, and it changed the course of my life. I realized that my love for animals couldn't just be about rescuing the occasional stray. It had to be about making a difference on a larger scale. I needed to use my voice, my platform, to raise awareness and advocate for change. I couldn't stand by and do nothing while so many animals suffered. It was time to take action, to become a voice for the voiceless. I had a platform and a responsibility to speak out against cruelty and advocate for change. I began to incorporate messages about animal welfare into my sermons, educating my congregation about the realities of puppy mills and the importance of adopting rather than buying pets. I organized community events to raise awareness and funds for animal rescue organizations. My mission was clear: to make a difference in the lives of as many animals as possible. And so, Father John's journey took on a new purpose, one that would touch the hearts of many and inspire others to join the fight against animal cruelty.
Spreading the gospel of compassion. Father John's sermon the following week was like no other. He spoke passionately about the plight of animals, not just in puppy mills, but in factory farms, in laboratories, and in our own backyards. His words were a call to action, a plea for empathy and understanding. He painted vivid pictures of the suffering these animals endure, urging his congregation to open their hearts and minds to the silent cries of these voiceless beings. He described the cramped, filthy conditions of puppy mills, where dogs are treated as mere commodities, bred repeatedly without regard for their well-being. He spoke of the horrors of factory farms, where animals are confined in tiny cages, deprived of natural behaviors, and subjected to unimaginable cruelty. He highlighted the plight of laboratory animals, who endure painful experiments in the name of science, often without any hope of relief. Father John didn't stop there. He brought the issue closer to home, reminding his congregation that animal suffering isn't just a distant problem. It's happening in our own backyards, in our neighborhoods, and sometimes even in our own homes. He spoke of neglected pets, left alone for hours on end, and of animals abandoned by their owners, left to fend for themselves on the streets.
I challenged my congregation to see the world through the eyes of their animals, to recognize their suffering, and to embrace their responsibility to act. I asked them to imagine the fear and pain these animals feel, to put themselves in their place, and to consider what they would want if they were in the same situation. I urged them to take action, not just in words, but in deeds, to make a real difference in the lives of these animals. This sermon sparked a movement. Parishioners, inspired by my words and example, began organizing fundraisers for local animal shelters, volunteering their time, and speaking out against animal cruelty. They started to see animals not just as pets or property, but as sentient beings deserving of compassion and respect. They began to advocate for better treatment of animals, both in their own communities and beyond. The impact was profound. People who had never before considered the plight of animals were now passionate advocates for their welfare. They joined protests against animal cruelty, held signs demanding change, and spoke at rallies to raise awareness. The church became a hub of activity, with members organizing events, hosting educational workshops, and partnering with local animal welfare organizations. The message of compassion spread far and wide, touching the hearts of many and inspiring them to take action.
What's your calling? So what about you? Do you think churches should be doing more to promote animal welfare? It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But one thing is clear, animals need our help. They don't have a voice, so we need to be their voice. We need to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Whether you're a person of faith or not, you have the power to make a difference. Learn more, do more. Today, we stand at a crossroads. While we champion compassion, care, and kindness toward one another, we cannot ignore the voiceless, who also belong to God's creation. Animals suffer needlessly, often because our communities overlook them. As leaders in faith, you have the power and duty to advocate for all creatures. Let us not fail in our mission to serve and protect every part of God's creation. Embrace a compassionate approach that reflects true stewardship. Do not let history record that the church stood silent in the face of suffering. Instead, let our legacy be one of action, mercy, and respect for all living beings. In doing so, we honor not only God's creation, but also the divine love that connects us all. This call to action encourages church leaders to live up to their spiritual and moral commitments, pressing them to extend their compassion to animals. And church members, you also have an obligation to protect all of God's creations. God's love does not just extend to the human race, but to all of His creations. This is Dr. Mark. I thank you and I pray that each of you will do what's right for all living beings. Let's work together to create a world where all creatures, great and small, are treated with kindness and respect.